radio show which features leaders from all walks of life in conversations about courageous connectedness. How do we stay connected to our best selves, especially when we are challenged? What becomes possible when we truly stay committed to our own and others' greatness, also when we don't feel it? Join host Hylke Faber, transformational coach, facilitator, and award-winning author of Taming Your Crocodiles, and his guests as they explore leadership greatness in today's episode of Rooted and Unwavering.
Welcome to Rooted and Unwavering, broadcasting live from Phoenix Business Radio X in Arizona, where we help leaders connect more deeply to their innate potential. I'm your host, Hylke Faber, and I'm here today with Robert Washington, a sales leader in Microsoft, also a U.S. Navy SEAL, father of 6, martial artist, and award-winning speaker, author, inventor, and many other things I'll talk to you about in a second. Robert, how are you this morning?
I'm pretty good. Thank you so much, Hylke.
Excellent. Very good. I'm glad that you're here. Before we're going to talk more about you, Robert, and about hearing your story about connectedness, I want to, as we always do, start this episode with a brief reminder. You could say a recentering of why we're talking about Rooted and Unwavering. So the intention of this series is that each of us gets more and more connected to what's true about ourselves, so we can get rooted in that. We all have all these forces that pull at us all the time. Things happen that we like, we don't like. We have thoughts and feelings. How, in those moments of challenge, do we come back to what is true, what we can rest in, our values, our intrinsic being? And that's what these conversations are about. And my personal experience is that I learn a lot more from stories than from concepts. So I'm so grateful to have guests like Robert Washington in the studio with us today. This is our 22nd episode, and Robert comes to us today from the state of Washington. He is, as I said, a father of 6, a sales leader, devoted husband, and his experience, which he will talk to you about in a moment, is quite varied. He grew up in one of the most dangerous cities in America, and despite that, always embraced a growth mindset and maintained an optimistic outlook on life. He has been distinguished and gotten awards as a motivational speaker. He draws on his own life experiences to do that. He has a lot of sales acumen, and he has earned recognition as one of the top sales executives at Microsoft. He, as I said, is an author, inventor, entrepreneur, consistently challenging the status quo. And he also served as a U.S. Navy veteran during the harrowing times of September 11. After his military service, he went on to work his competitive spirit and determination as a professional mixed martial artist. And he has also developed a framework called Goro. That's something that we're going to also explore more about. That's about how to basically work with a growth mindset. The little sentence that I read about Robert that stays with me, probably will always stay with me, is he is very clear about not being a victim to the past, but be a victor of the present and an architect of the future. Robert Washington, very happy that you're here today with us at Rooted and Unwavering. So tell us a little bit more about your experience learning about connectedness in your own life.
Yes. Thank you so much, Hylke. Thank you for the intro, and thank you for allowing me to be here today. And I love kind of what the whole framework of this conversation around connectedness. And I've learned throughout my years, throughout failures, and throughout opportunities to grow that when I think about connectedness, I think about this. Everything starts and stops with relationships. And when I relationships, not only relationships with other people, but relationships with ourselves. The more I understand myself, the more I'm able to connect with others around me. So my whole philosophy around the kind of the Guru mindset and what I'm trying to do in life and how I'm trying to inspire and impact other people's life is I want to help people build better relationships with themselves, which is going to help them build better connectiveness and relationship with others around them. And like that's the true value, in this world we live in today. So that's kind of where I kind of fit in from a connectedness perspective, and also how that ties into relationships also.
Thank you for sharing that, Robert. So I'd like to start with the beginning. So little Robert, once upon a time, there was little Robert. Tell us a bit more. Where were you born?
Oh man.
What was it like back then? And through that experience, what have you been learning about connecting to yourself? Because you talked about getting to know yourself is really important. I'm sure you got to know yourself in that time in very specific ways.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, I mean, you hit on some of it. So, I was born and raised in poverty in one of the most dangerous cities in America. I had some very, very unfortunate circumstances as a child. But a lot of those circumstances, kind of going back to what you said, I never looked at my life from a victim perspective. I always thought I was a victim. I always felt that I was a special child. And that helped me kind of overcome some of my traumatic experiences. So, as far back as a child, I've always looked at life, everything as an opportunity, because when you don't have nothing, you have nothing to hold you back, right? So growing up with zero, there was nothing to hold me back. So I've always kind of leveraged my creative mind, look at, instead of looking at obstacles, looking at opportunities in life. But also, because I grew up in such a, impoverished kind of environment, one of the things that really kind of helped me build that kind of relationship or connective type of mindset is just being a codependent growing up. So growing up, because I was a young man, and at an early age, I was forced to do things that a lot of young kids didn't have to do. I was taking care of my parents. I was taking care of my younger brother, even my older sister. Like I was the man of the house at a young age.
Mm.
So because I was a codependent, it kind of forced me to put others in front of me, right?
Mm.
And which is a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing. But I've learned to leverage that kind of codependency kind of mindset, service before self mindset, to really be a value to others. So my whole life, because of some of the things that I endured and some of the experiences I endured as a child, it's all about, how do I add value to others' lives, right? And if I take that mindset into everything I do, then it's not about me. It's about you. It's about how can I add value to what you're doing. And when you do that, you extract ego from the situation, and I'm able to build relationships with others because it's not about me. It's about you.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. I'm very curious, Robert, how that started, because you talked about being and growing up with zero. So imagining what zero looks like, maybe you can talk about that for a second. And then where do you get the wherewithal to make that choice to not be a victim of that circumstance, but actually find a way through that and find the resilience that I see and hear in your words? What happened?
Yeah, so for me, I think there was a couple positive influences in my life that really helped me kind of um, not not be, I guess, attached to my surroundings, right? I think one of the biggest challenges some people face is they are their environment, or they are their past, or they are a reflection of their parents. I've always detached myself from my environment. And so, for example, even when I was poor, I never had a poor mindset, right?
Mm.
I've always looked at, here's an opportunity for me to, do something for my family, or help my mom out, or maybe go fishing. This is an opportunity for me to give back to others around me. So I never really looked at life as a as a way of me being a victim. I'll always look at it as a way for me leveraging these small moments to really prove my value to the world. So for example, like to get into the details, like every morning when I was a young boy, we used to have to wake up in the morning. I had to fish for my food while other kids were out, hanging out and, going to school, getting ready. My daily task was to wake up and fish for food for my family. So I would wake up before school. We lived in New Orleans, Louisiana. I would walk across the street, climb over the levee, take my fishing rod and my pole, and go out there and fish. But even the reverse, to go rewind for a second, we didn't even have worms to go out and fish. So the nights before that, I would place these bricks in the yard, and then I would wake up the next morning at 6 a.m., lift the bricks back up, and there will be worms underneath those bricks. I would take those worms and go fish for my meals. And so when you think about that, when it goes back to what you're saying, like I had nothing, but I was able to, from nothing, go and extract worms from the ground and go bring substance to my family. So when a lot of people look at life and say, well, I don't have this, I don't have that, like for me, nothing creates an opportunity to go and be creative and find something from nothing, right? So I think that's kind of like the framework that I built when I talk about having nothing and being able to create something from nothing. Because as much as we think we don't have nothing, there's a lot of things around us that can help us achieve and reach our goals if we're present and if we're paying attention to everything around us. And so, from a young boy, because I had nothing, I had to pay attention to everything because everything was something that can get me further on along in life.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful. I hear in that also part of the wisdom of being very detached. Like you said in the very beginning, something that I want to highlight is I am not my surroundings.
Mm,
I'm not my parents. I'm not my past. I'm
mm,
not what I have.
mm,
I am here. And from that place of presence, I interact with the world differently. And what you're talking about and what I'm hearing you talk about is say, then I can see it with fresh eyes.
mm,
And then I know to put a stone out in the evening so I have worms in the morning.
mm,
And then I know that I can go fishing in the morning and get fish.
mm,
Now, this sounds to some listeners very courageous.
mm,
To me, it does. And for some, it might also be like, well, where did the guy get the faith to do it? Because
mm.
even going fishing is an act of faith because you don't know whether you're gonna get fish. So how did that work with the little boy? Going out fishing in the morning, did you get fish every day? And how did that work out?
It was, I mean, for me, it was more, and like going back to what I'm saying, I always looked at it as it's not about me because I grew up in that codependent mindset, that service to others before self. I've always put others in front of me. That helped me kind of wake up in the morning because if it was just about me, then I probably wouldn't have been able to do it. But I knew that I had people that was leaning on me, that was relying on me to extract these worms from the ground and go fish for these food. So when other people quit, I kept going because the faith was driven from everybody around me. I had a lot of people looking that was leaning on me at a young age. So I had a lot of pressure on me and I had to perform. And some broke during those type of moments. But again, I've always looked at those types of moments as areas to show the world that I am a special person and I do want to make an impact. So even as far as a young boy, I've built this mindset to put others in front of me, which has helped me, when times get tough, think about the consequences and the impacts of the decision I make and how it's going to impact not only myself, but all those people around me. And that's why I just never give up. Today, everything I do, I just never quit because it's bigger than me.
I never quit because it is bigger than me. I love that. I never quit because it's bigger than me and that propels me forward. I also resonated with you saying, when I'm in service, it loosens my ego attachment.
Mhm.
I realize that I am much bigger than this thinking that I have about little self. So
Mhm.
today, Robert, you're not going out fishing in the morning, or maybe you are to get food for your family. You do other things. So tell us about your life today and how you apply those principles that you're speaking about of connecting to your true self in
Yeah.
your day to day. Tell us about that.
So I do go out fishing, but a different type of fish. And this type of fish that I go out and fish for is actually food for thought, like thought food for others. So I have a very, very kind of habitual routine every single day. So in the morning, I make sure that I pray, I meditate, but I take care of myself. So my first actions before I pick up a phone or anything is I center myself in the morning through prayer, through meditation, drinking a glass of water, and just being connected to the environment around me. And from there, I go out and I work out. And while working out, I'm always listening to something or a podcast or reading an audio book that's going to help me grow closer to the relationships I'm looking to build.
Mm.
And typically, so what I like to do is I break my life down to these four core pillars. It's self, faith, family, and focus. So every single day, I'm working to grow closer to those four pillars. Self being myself. I believe the biggest relationship that I can have is a relationship with myself. Because when I have a relationship with myself, I can understand others better. When I have a relationship with myself, I don't give myself slack. If I'm messing up, I'm real with myself. I don't make excuses. I don't make complaints. I don't become a victim of my own thoughts, right? And the next pillar is faith. So I'm always growing and trying to build a relationship closer to my faith, my spiritual believing, the things that I believe in, right? So every day I'm adding to that bucket also. And the family piece, I'm always trying to ingest information that's going to help me become a better person for the people behind me, right? Because that's really what matters. And the focus being my job and my giving back. So every single day, I'm taking in information that's going to help me grow closer to these things. And when you think about a growth strategy for my life, that's my growth strategy. Every day I'm filling my buckets. And I truly believe that everything matters. And that's why I pay attention to everything. I can't be too focused on work and give up on my family and vice versa, right? I have to be centered and balanced across the spectrum of these four core pillars, and every day I'm working to fill those buckets individually. So a lot of my habits and rituals that I develop is all around how am I growing closer to these four pillars in my life. That's a growth strategy. And how I make sure I'm filling these four buckets and I'm not just focused on one bucket and leaving the other bucket unfilled.
Beautiful. So self, faith, family, and focus.
Mhm.
So you have 6 kids, Robert, right?
Yeah, a
And
lot.
so tell me about how does it work to balance that? Because I also speak with people that have as much on their plate as you, or even less, that
Mhm.
may think, well, it's too much for me. It overwhelms me. This is, I don't have, this one thing becomes everything. And the other ones just have to take a break until the next decade when the kids are older. Tell us about how you are able to do this, and really
Yeah.
tell us about, like, how does that work on a day to day? Like, you
Oh
have
yeah.
kids
Oh,
asking
yeah.
you, and how does this work?
Yeah, so part of my mindset philosophy is not saying what you saying is too much. I just don't believe I can ever say those type of words, and it goes back to my whole philosophy towards committing to something. I always tell myself, once you make a commitment to stay committed to your commitments. So it's a triple C. I call it triple C. But what I'm really trying to say is, when you make a commitment to something, stay committed to those commitments. So when times get tough, remember you have to stay committed to those commitments. Not just commitment, but you have to stay committed to those commitments. So
Mm.
I never tell myself that I don't have enough time. I never tell myself that it's too worrisome. I never tell myself that, I'm stressed out or anything like that. I believe when I start to tell myself that, I'll start to create that like victim mindset. And I start operating that way. So, for example, just recently, I took on a task. Well, my wife asked me. My wife volunteered me to be a flag football coach for my kids' two teams, and I said right away, I can do this, right? And so while a lot of the other parents and things that I was working with, it's like, man, this is too time consuming. I'm not able to do it. My thing was like, okay, how can I rearrange my my schedule and make this more of a family event? So instead of me saying, hey, I can't do this, I got six kids, I looked at it this way. How can I do this with six kids? And so this is how I shifted my mindset. I
Mm.
brought my three oldest boys out and I had them volunteer help coach. And my two youngest boys, was actually on the football team. So it became a family event. So now, every week when we're going out Wednesday and Thursday, my boys are giving back to the team. My wife is out there. My 6 month year old daughter is out there. And we're having a family connected event because that small shift in mindset of, okay, this is not too much. Let's make it a day out in the park for the family now. So little things like that, when you start to shift your mindset, you start to see possibilities that you probably didn't see, right?
Yes, yes, yes. I can see the little boy going fishing and putting the stone out and getting the worms again. It is a very different skill right now. That's very beautiful. That's very beautiful. So then tell us how that translates into work. You work as a sales leader in Microsoft. So how does this structure, these strategies work of connectedness in work for you?
Yeah, yeah. I like to say this also. Every successful internal, external, and customer engagement starts and ends with you, right? And so what that means is you are the value proposition. You know, you're leading the sale, you're leading the first customer engagement, you're leading the first internal partner engagement. So, but you are the value proposition that you bring into the table, right? So when I do that, I want to bring the most authentic, the most real, the most loving, the most caring version of myself in each engagement. So in order to do that, I have to, going back to what you said, I have to pull back and I have to detach myself from the past that could be holding me back, but I also have to detach myself from the future. In that space, when I create that space, that's the present moment. So where as others lead in and they're so focused on this outcome they're trying to achieve, I just want to end it. I want to understand the person that's in front of me, right? Because that's really what matters. When I start to understand this person and what they're trying to achieve or their challenges or more about them, then it makes me help me build a better relationship with that person. But in order to do that, you have to pull yourself back to what you were trying to achieve and just be there and be present. And I think that takes a lot of work, a lot of skill, a lot of just habitual practice. But when I leave these conversations, I leave with me. I leave with who I am as a person, my value proposition, my why, my purpose, because at the end of the day, that's my competitive differentiator from everybody else in the market. Because when I'm connected to you as a person, you have to understand I become an extension of your team. So that what that means is Robert's aligned to your mission and he's willing to knock down barriers to make sure that we as a team hit our goals together. But that's really, it's not about me again. It's about how can I add value to what you're doing? How can I align to your mission? So there's that mindset shift, you know, that shift in your mindset of like, it's about the other person can greatly, I feel, help you build better relationships with others.
Very clear. This It's not about me, and I've heard you say this now in very different uh, manifestations in this conversation. Like it's not about me. I'm going to go fishing for my family. It's not about me. There's a way for me to be of service to you and be part of your team. And it's not about what my mind has made up right now. It's about being in this present moment.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit more about how you practice being in the present moment, because I hear you being very intentionally conscious of that. And I'd
Mhm.
love to hear, Robert, both about your victories and about your failures in this and what
Mhm.
you've learned from that.
Yeah, I'll start off with my failures because it kind of alludes back to how did I get to the point that I'm in. So, I wasn't always this person, right? Because of my past, I've learned from a young age to be a provider for my family, just be a provider. And so, because I've seen all the men around me just kind of provide and protect, I didn't know there was other aspect of being a father, right? Because I didn't see it. And so for a long time, it was about work, 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 work. And a lot of that came from me, from what I seen, but also societal's expectations of failure that was projected onto me. And that stuff consumed me.
Mm,
And for a long time, I feel like I needed to overwork or overprove myself to the world because of this, because the world looked down on me.
mm,
And so to say that, as a professional athlete, I've I ran into some huge obstacles early on later in my career because of this. So, for example, I'm sure one of these failures to say that really opened me up. So far back, I think this was 2016. One of my last fights as a professional mixed martial artist, I overtrained myself almost to the death. And the reason I did that is because I was an underdog going into that fight.
mm,
And so I wanted to prove it to the world and everybody that was around me that I was better. So I put more emphasis in my training.
mm,
And I remember one day, it was like 12 o'clock at night. I walked into the house. My wife was like, "Where are you going, Robert?" I said, "I'm going back out and train. I got to train. These people are doubting me. I have to prove them wrong." So think about that. My whole energy, my whole drive was to prove others wrong. So it pushed me to a point that I was overworking myself, overtraining. And then I remember another day I came in the house and my wife looked at me. She said, "Robert, you're here, but you're not present." I'm like, "What do you mean? I'm going out and doing all this stuff. I'm helping out." She said, "Robert, you're here, but you're not emotionally present."
mm,
And that really struck me, like just hit a chord to me. Like, what does she mean when she say that?
mm,
So as much as I was there, I was never emotionally present because I was always thinking about the next thing. I gotta hit this goal. I gotta do that.
mm,
And so when I went into this fight, I almost, like I said, long story short, I almost overtrained myself to the death. And my kidneys had shut down. I was going into cardiac arrest, and I had an awakening at that moment in the hospital bed. I was like, "Man, what am I doing? Like, why am I pushing so hard? Like, what's in the past has pushed me to push so? What am I trying to prove to the world? What really matters?" And from that moment, it kind of pushed me into my public speaking because I shared my moment with the world and how that impacted me. And it pushed me to public speaking in different areas of my life that was just bigger than me. Like that sport was just a platform sport to help me get to my real goal, which is helping other people overcome these challenges that I've been able to overcome. And look, the biggest thing I say when I say this is like, the biggest curse I can ever have if I take all this knowledge to the grave with me. Like that'd be the biggest disservice I've ever done. So a part of me is just like giving this back to the world. So though that moment actually put me in a position to I needed to change. So some of the things that I do on a daily basis to stay more present is to I always challenge my thoughts, right? Because if I don't control my thoughts, I know my thoughts will control my actions. So I'm always having a conversation with my thoughts. And so when thoughts come into my mind, I'm always asking myself, is this thought true? Does this thought benefit me? But more importantly, where's this thought coming from? Because a lot of times our negative or our dysfunctional thoughts could be coming from a place of dysfunction. So create space between you and your thoughts and understanding you are not your thoughts. To me, is something that I constantly do on a daily basis. And that's growth, right? That is growth every single day. There's not be one day where I feel like I got it because life's going to smack me again, right? So I'm constantly challenging myself every single day, and I'm my biggest critic sometimes.
I really resonate with that. We're going to take a break in a moment. We've been talking to Robert Washington. One of the core teachings that I've been receiving from speaking with you today is to be totally disciplined, very disciplined about
Right.
not believing my thoughts as they come up, but actually being clear and asking myself those three questions. Is this true? Is this helpful? And where does this come from? After the break, we'll explore this more. And also, we're going to explore more with him, with Robert, about what was it like, those moments before the cardiac arrest, and what was that awakening insight like for him and what he learned from that. So I will be back after the break.
You are listening to Rooted and Unwavering, presented by Growth Leaders Network, the leadership, team, and culture development company. If you would like to learn more about working on connectedness for yourself, your team, or organization, please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Rooted and Wavering. We're here with Robert Washington, currently a leader in sales for Microsoft, also a professional martial artist, and also a father of six and devoted husband, and a public speaker, and many other things that I'm sure you haven't told us about yet. Let's go back to this moment of cardiac arrest or almost cardiac arrest. I want to hear more about this. You asked this question, where did this thought come from? This third question. So where did this thinking come from your perspective? What did you discover, Robert, in that moment as you were in the hospital that led you to overwork?
So yeah. So like, no, that's a great question. I think for me is um, at that moment when I was in the hospital, one of the things that I was just kind of self-reflecting on my whole life. Everything was still. Like nothing else mattered but that moment that was in front of me. And so that provoked me to go dig a little bit deep and really go and attack those questions that I've kind of went away from, or I just didn't give it any attention in the past. So the first question I asked myself in that moment in the hospital bed when the doctor came back in, she said, Robert, your heart's twice the size of a normal heart. You were going in cardiac arrest. It's like most people would have probably been freaking out of like, okay, I'm about to die. It was like, okay, I wanted to know, how did I get here? That was my first question I had to myself. And so that's where, I feel like prior to that, if I had known myself a little bit better, I would have known that, I was in my past and I wouldn't been pushed to overachieve these goals because of my past or things that's been projected on me from my environment around me. So because I was able to dig into that question uh, at that moment, I was able to understand that everything that I was doing was because of past failures. Everything that I was doing was because of past family failures or past societal expectations. And I wasn't being the true authentic version of myself. I was doing what I expected society expected me to do.
Mm.
Right. So it pulled me away from my authentic version of myself. And so that's where I was challenged. I was challenging my own thoughts at that moment, and it really awakened me to dig a little bit deeper to get a better understanding of who Robert is.
Mm.
And then I went on this journey from 2016 to now, and I feel like I have a better understanding of who I am because of that moment.
Yes, yes, yes. So digging a little deeper is what you said, or what I heard, and being able to face your thoughts and also be very clear. It's like, oh, this thinking is not me. Like this
Mhm.
thinking belongs to beliefs I had about my family's failings, or this thinking belongs to beliefs I had about the society's expectations of
Mhm.
me. But these are
Mhm.
my thoughts about that have nothing to do with me. Yes.
Mhm.
So when you become free from those thoughts,
Mhm.
what do you discover about yourself? Then who is Robert without those thoughts?
Yeah, no, good question. So, for a long time, I felt that I needed to prove myself to the world, right? Because of those thoughts. And I wouldn't show up the authentic version. I'm funny. I'm char- I'm a character. I love people, and I've always felt for a long time because of these thoughts that was projected on me that I needed to prove to people that I was a good person.
Mm,
And now, I mean, just to simplify your question, I just have to be a good person. I just have to show up every day to be a good person. Because I feel like if you're trying to do something, then you're not being authentic. If you
mm,
just be and just do, then you just show up you. So everything you see, the post I make on Facebook, on LinkedIn, that's who I am inside and outside the work. You
mm,
get one version of Robert, and you see what you get. Like there's no this Rob. Rob is Rob, and I care about people. So why do I have to try to be somebody different if I'm a good person? I really, really care about people. And that's like my value proposition. As a leader, I feel like my competitive differentiator is I care. A lot of people talk about it, but I actually live it every single day. Like I truly care about people. And people know, like if you call Rob, he's gonna pick up the phone.
mm.
Like that's the value that I bring to the table. And my wife knows that too, because I care about people. So by detaching myself from all this stuff, I'm able to be the best version of myself.
Mm.
I'm able to have this conversation and just be authentic and show my vulnerabilities with the world because I know that my vulnerabilities can be strength to other people. And I'm not just living in my own thoughts. And I can share that to help other people grow and overcome their challenges.
Yes, yes. I'm so struck, Robert, by your commitment. Like if I think about you and your story and what you've been telling us and what you've been sharing, and also what I sense from you is your commitment, your deep commitment to what you have committed to. And I love that you made that distinction. Not only commitment, but also being committed to your commitment. What do you want to say to somebody who is not unwavering in their commitment, but currently finds themselves in a situation where they may waver? Because we all have these thoughts. We all have these thoughts. We're human,
Mhm.
right? Where we feel weakness. And what do you want to say to them? And what do you say to yourself?
Yeah. So like if anyone's in a situation where you feel, where you're kind of unwavering in your thoughts, like you saying, it's like the first thing I like to do to myself is I'm always lifting myself up. Sometimes you have to go back and look at, your own patterns of success. What have you done? Because a lot of times we're our own biggest critic. So a lot of that stuff is like, let's pull ourselves out of that victim mindset. Let's get to a mindset where we're more open to be optimistic. So anytime you're in one of those ruts or you're just feeling down, really think about like who you are and how powerful you are to the world. And some of the things I do when I'm in that situation is I go and give back to others. So whenever I'm down or I'm not feeling good or I'm out or I'm just like, hey, I wanna be just a little bit more optimistic. I'll go and give back to others because that fulfills my and it will open me up to to have me more in an open mindset to be able to explore the world. Because, I always like to say this other quote. I'll say also, you can't have an open conversation with a closed mind, right? So the first thing we have to do is we have to open our minds to receive the information, to receive the energy that's around us. It's going to help us grow and expand. So that's really one of the things I do to kind of pull myself out of those small little ruts, and just to make sure that I'm constantly on pace of hitting not only my goals but helping others around me hit their goals.
So in the rut, you get yourself out of it. And I like it. You call it little ruts, which to me also suggests that you have this sense of
Mhm.
the bigger perspective that we're part of, that you're saying, okay, how do I open myself to the bigger picture here? And one way to do that for you is service. That helps
Mhm.
you being there all the time. And I can only imagine in your life with 6 kids and all the things you're doing that you're pulled into that, whether you like it or not, all the time. And you seem to be enjoying that, which
Yeah.
is wonderful to hear. I want to go back to your decision of becoming a professional mixed martial artist.
Mhm.
Tell us about how that happened and how that relates to your journey into more and more connectedness.
Yeah, yeah. So it's so crazy how that situation happened to become a mixed martial artist. And a lot of my mixed martial arts background kind of went back to me following the path to mixed martial arts, went back to me trying to prove something to the world. I just felt like I was one of those kids. I was bullied. I was always undervalued, underlooked, and I always felt like I wanted to prove something to the world. So a part of my journey in life was to prove something to the world, and I feel like I can do that through mixed martial arts. So I joined mixed martial arts, honestly, I think with the wrong intention, but it worked out because that was my path, and that's the only thing I knew at that moment. So it's not any, I don't have any regrets with it. I was just trying to find my path. So that journey to mixed martial arts was, I was in the military, I was stationed overseas, and I was in Guam at the time. And at the time, I wanted to be something bigger than just a military, member. I wanted to prove to myself that physically I could do something. I could win something. So that was kind of mixed martial arts to me. And through mixed martial arts, I started to build the confidence I needed to be successful in life. And so I would get these small little wins over and over. And I was like, wow, I am of value to the world. I am okay. I am good. I'm a good person. I can compete at the highest level, and things like that. So these little wins would help me kind of build my confidence up. And so that's when I kind of fell in love with the whole sport. And then I started to look at mixed martial arts in a different view, almost to say it wasn't almost mixed martial arts at one period of my life became about life. It became about this is more how to react to think how to not to react to everything in life. So one of the most beautiful things I learned from mixed martial arts is emotional control, right? And so through mixed martial arts, I've learned to not react to everything that's thrown at me. For example, if me and you, Hilka, we was like standing right next to each other, and I swung on you, and we start 2 feet away, you'll probably swing back. But if we were standing 20 feet away and I swung on you, you probably wouldn't. And the reason because of that space. And so mixed martial arts, if you think about the fighting aspects in mixed martial arts, everything is about timing, spacing, and discipline. So because my opponent swings on me, I can't swing back every time my opponent swings on me because then I'm controlled by my opponent's action. So think about life. If everything life throws at you, you're swinging at everything, then you're controlled by everything that been thrown at you. So mixed martial arts kind of taught me how to be centered, how to be balanced, how to be still, and how not to react to everything that's thrown at
Mm, I love that. That's time and space. And what was the third thing you said? time and space. Anyway, there was something about that. I love the metaphor of being when you're hitting at me from 20 feet away and I have that perspective, then I can sense the space. And what I'm sensing you do is
Mhm.
in interactions with others, when things happening, you stay centered in the space. So you choose whether you respond or not. And that's a way of
Mhm.
practicing being detached. And that's one of the lessons you learned from the martial arts, is what I'm hearing from you. So today, as you're sitting in your chair today, in on May 26, 2023, what do you sense you're being called into? Because my sense of you is, Robert, that given your commitment and being committed to your commitment, you've grown so much in your life. So, what is called for now, you think, in your life in terms of your next area of growth? Where do you want to be growing into?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to my first saying, kind of going. There's really no outcome outside of growing closer to myself, my faith, my family, and my focus. And I say that because for me, that to me is success. That to me embodies almost a 360 view of success. And so my calling is those three things. And if those three, whatever aligns, I mean, those four things, whatever aligns to those four buckets, and then I kind of just follow the path. So, like, I make a lot of decisions more efficiently and effectively because I check those four buckets throughout my decision. So, if it's not going to help me build a better version of myself, grow closer to my faith, my family, or my focus, then I just turn it down. But if it aligns to those buckets, then I know, okay, that's the next step I need to take. So I think the path, as I continue to grow and walk, the path will unveil itself because there's no specific outcomes. The only outcome that I'm looking to achieve is to be a better version of myself every single day. And look, that's a journey. And that can take, I'm never going to master it, but I'm continuing to continue to grow as an individual because I don't hit a goal and say, okay, what's next? This journey just continues to go.
Always grow into a better version of myself and continuing to grow in those four buckets of self, faith, family, and focus. I really want to reflect on that a bit more with you and also with the listeners,
Yeah.
thinking about what each of our buckets might be. I love the clarity of that and also the strength that I feel and the resolve that I feel from you. It's like I'm committed to self, I'm committed to faith, I'm committed to family, and I'm committed to focus. Hmm. So tell us about maybe an experience you had, maybe recently, where you had to make a choice, where it was very obvious to you that not fitting, not doing it. How can you tell us about that and how that works for you in practice?
Yeah, so I get a lot of things just thrown at me. So um, things that might not be aligned. Maybe they're more focused on generating just income and not impact. So you know, there's just so many things just thrown at me or us on a daily basis that can distract us from our goals. Like I look at it this way: if I have a strategy and I'm moving towards my strategy, like I'm this big ship, right? And my strategy is to hit this goal in 2 years, right? And if I'm this huge big ship and I got a 2 year journey to hit this goal, and every time there's a distraction, this big ship has to turn around and go the other way or go left or right, I'm never going to hit that goal. So it's like kind of going back to you said, how do you like manage the distractions that's thrown at us every single day, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I hate to say this, but it goes back to that. So, like, I get opportunities all the time to do things that's not aligned to who I am. And it's easy for me to make a decision because my decision is not based on monetary gain, it's not based on titles or recognitions, it's not based on fame, it's based on those four core priorities of mine.
Mm.
So anytime I'm asked to do something and it's not ethical, it's not who I am as a person, it's not aligned to my, it's easy to say no. And it goes back to what I said later also, because I understand that every decision that I make, the consequence and the impact of those decisions is going to affect everything around me. So like when I'm offered something that seems like it might stretch me away from my faith, my family, or my focus, I just say no. And for example, I've before I took the job here in Microsoft, I was offered another role that was halfway across the country in an area that I knew my family wouldn't be happy. It was easy for me to say no to that decision because I knew the cost of living was extremely high. My wife wouldn't like the area at all, but the pay in that job was extremely high also. So, but there wasn't a lot of churches that I like to attend in the area. There wasn't a lot of opportunities for me to grow as an individual in a lot of communities that had diverse and inclusive people. So a lot of people would have took the job just from the monetary gain, but I looked at it from a 360 view and said, okay, how does this align to who I'm trying to be? How does this align to me grow closer to my faith? How does it align to me building a better relationship with my family? And how does it align to me giving back to the world and focusing on the things that really matter to me? And it did. So that was an easy decision, even though the monetary gain for that job would have been really nice. But it was really easy for me just to say no and walk away. And I use this framework in all my high level decision making processes. Like it's easy to make a decision now because I have a universal framework where I can just check the boxes. Okay, how does it check these boxes? And it has to check all four boxes. If it doesn't, I just can't do it, right? Because then, like I said, that strategy, that goal, I'm taking this big ship and I'm taking it in another direction, right? And I'm never going to hit, that goal that I want to hit, which is to be, hopefully one day master those four pillars, which I'm probably never going to do, right?
Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. So you're making these decisions, and it sounds to me almost with ease. And the way you're like saying, it's like, well, this is not fitting. This is not fitting. And interesting to hear you say, not money, not fame, two very strong distractions in our current society. So tell us maybe as we're getting towards the end of our conversation already, which surprises me because I'm still in the middle of it for my
Yeah.
feeling, is tell us a bit about what is that like when you make these decisions in your in this focus. What does that feel like inside of you? What is that like?
Oh, that's a deep question. It's a great question. It's a deep question. I think because I made the decision and I checked those boxes, I never have any regret. Every decision is the right decision if I check those boxes because I know I'm going to make it the right decision, right? If it checks those boxes, then it's the right decision. So I feel good when I make those decisions. No, sometimes we make decisions and we regret our decisions right away. And it's because we might not have done the due diligence to vet that decision out and make sure it's a good decision. But when I make these decisions because I've checked the boxes, I know that if there's any thoughts that came up, those are self-inflicted thoughts that I can get away. Those are just thoughts that don't really have any meaning because the decision is already grounded on those four pillars. And so it's easy for me to embrace that decision and continue that commitment towards those decisions. And I never give up on my decisions. I never give up on my decisions because if it's grounded in those four pillars, then that means it was the right decision. Now I'm the person that has to make it, right, from a, actual tactical execution perspective. But from a high level, it was the right decision. And there's going to be obstacles in either path. But just feeling good about your decisions is going to help you embrace those decisions and really drive momentum to execute on those decisions when you might have a little doubt in your mind.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Robert. As we're getting towards the final minutes here of our conversation, I am taking away from this conversation so much. One of them is this deep commitment to commitment, also the unwavering focus on what are our true priorities, and really inviting us to reflect on what are your true priorities that are guiding you, and what are pseudo priorities that actually have nothing to do with you. The conversation about being very disciplined about our thinking and asking ourselves those three very powerful questions. Is this true? Is this of service? And where is this coming from? And then, last but not least, this whole sense of when I feel in a rut, think service. That is a sure way to defeat the ego entrapment. Robert, what is it that you want to say by way of closing our conversation?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the whole kind of grounding of the relation, just this conversation today. I always like to say it's not about you kind of mindset. Um, you know, think about everything we do, right? And how we can impact others around us and constantly kind of shift your mindset from a I into like about the team or it's about the people I'm trying to support. But also, I challenge everyone to create a growth strategy for your own personal life. Like, what's your four pillars, right? Because look, growth is constant. If you're not growing towards the things you want to grow towards, what are you growing towards? Because you're growing, you might be growing towards habits that does not benefit you. So I challenge everyone to create a growth strategy. Look, we have strategies for our business. We have strategies for our side gigs. Why don't we have a growth strategy for our life, right? And through that growth strategy, I challenge everyone also to focus on relationships. I think, like, going back to what I say, everything starts and ends with relationships. But the first relationship, I think, is the relationship with ourselves. So, I mean, in closing, that's kind of my challenge to the world. Um, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Well, I deeply appreciate being with you today and so grateful for the example that you set by the way you are and what you've been sharing with us today. You can listen more to this podcast on Spotify and Apple. You can find us there. You can also find Robert Washington on LinkedIn and other places, and also book him for a speaking engagement if you like to do that. We're very grateful that you've been listening to Rooted and Wavering. Again, you can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify and Apple and other places. And also you can find us on LinkedIn under my name. I will be again together in Rooted and Wavering in 2 weeks with Adam Freed, who is the managing partner of GSV Ventures. He speaks 11 languages, is on his third career, has two amazing kids, one hilarious dog, and is the best husband ever. And he says life is good even in crazy times. So we'll hear from him building more on the wisdom we heard today from Robert. That will be June 9th. That's it for today. Thank you again, Robert, for being with us and sharing your wisdom so eloquently and powerfully. I hope that if you listened, you found some helpful nuggets today that maybe connect you more deeply to your core priorities. You've been listening to Rooted and Wavering, where we help leaders connect more deeply to their innate potential. I'm your host, Hylke Faber. See you next time.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode of Rooted and Unwavering, leadership conversations about courageous connectedness, presented by the leadership development company, Growth Leaders Network. To learn more, subscribe to this podcast, connect with Growth Leaders Network and Hylke Faber on LinkedIn, or read Hylke's award-winning book, Taming Your Crocodiles. Now take a moment and appreciate something that is great about you. Celebrate the gift that you are and enjoy connecting more deeply to your best self today. See you next time on Rooted and Unwavering.